Grüezi miteinander und herzlich willkommen zu Gredig Direkt, heute aus Bern. Mein heutiger Gast ist eine Frau, die international für Schlagzeilen gesorgt hat. Sie ist letztes Jahr gegen den langjährigen weißrussischen Machthaber Alexander Lukaschenko antreten bei der Präsidentschaftswahl. Unter dubiosen Umständen hat sie die Wahl verloren und sie lebt seitdem im Exil und führt von dort aus die Opposition in Belarus, ihrem Heimatland. Welcome, Swetlana Tichanowskaja.
Hello.
I think it's fair to say that we all had a very troubling, a very turbulent year regarding the pandemic, the political fall down and fallouts of that pandemic. But you had an even more turbulent year when we think about everything that went on in your country, in Belarus. So I think the first question to ask is, how are you? How are you today?
I always hesitate answering this question, how are you? Because physically I'm okay, physically I'm safe, but every minute I'm thinking about the situation in Belarus. Every minute I'm thinking about people who are in jails at the moment in my own country. So, of course I can answer I'm okay, but I'm not okay.
Mm-hmm. One of those who is in jail at the moment is your husband. He has been in jail since last year. How is he?
My husband is innocent person, and his case is absolutely politicized. And he has spent in jail 9 months already. My children haven't seen their daddy for 9 months. And the same... the rest of the people who are in jail for so many months, and they just there only for conveying their opinion about the situation in Belarus. And answering this question, I think that he's not okay as well, just spending so much time in jail for nothing. People don't deserve this in Belarus.
We will talk about the situation in Belarus and, of course, in the prisons, in the jails as well. I'm just wondering, are you even able to speak to him? Were you able to talk to him since he was arrested?
In Belarus, there is no possibility to talk to prisoners or to visit them. Just relatives can communicate only through the lawyers. Lawyers are allowed to visit prisoners, and just we can send messages and, of course, write letters. But letters are often not delivered to prisoners as well.
Let us speak about your visit to Switzerland. You have spent some days here. You have been talking to a lot of people. What were your intentions? What was the reason why you came to Switzerland?
So first of all, main intention is just to raise awareness about Belarus. And since election, I had visited a lot of countries, but Switzerland is the first country that is not EU member. Mm-hmm. And secondly, Switzerland is also a particular country because the citizen of Switzerland, Langzeitherrscher, is also in jail. Mm-hmm. She came in August to Belarus to support this revolution because she felt pain for her nation, and she was detained. And she was already sentenced to 2.5 years of jail just because participating in these rallies. And we asked Switzerland to be vocal about situation in Belarus. And of course, Switzerland is important from point of view of Lukashenko's assets and Lukashenko's cronies' assets here. And after the election, Switzerland told that they are going to, after the sanctions were imposed, Switzerland promised to block, to freeze Lukashenko's accounts. They found, they told they will block accounts of 15 people, but we don't have updated information. So we want to.
Do you have a sum? Do you know which amount is actually on these bank accounts?
We were told by government that they will freeze 15 accounts, but we don't know the results of the situation. So we are going to investigate this. And of course, Switzerland can investigate other accounts of other cronies just to continue this job. And of course, Switzerland, UN is important because UN headquarters is here, and they're having this session now. And UN is important to UN is important just for finding justice in Belarus.
And to put on pressure, I guess, for the country.
Yes, and we want UN to put in a resolution that a special group of eminent experts to be organized just to keep an eye on Belarus all the time, not to lose Belarus from the agenda.
When can come back quickly to the first reason you gave, Mrs. Herrscher, who is a double citizen, Switzerland and from Belarus. We hear she's been transferred to a women's prison now. Do you know more about her and the situation she's in?
You know, Natalia Herrscher is a real hero, because while she could stay in safe Switzerland, just eat chocolate and cheese, she preferred to stay with her Belarusian people, to join them in the fight for new elections, for human rights. And she was jailed, and we know that she has started hunger strike because she didn't get letters from freedom. And this is very sensitive situation, because she, it's very dangerous for her health, and it's difficult for Swiss people to understand the conditions of held people in jails. They are awful. And Natalia, for sure, she's our hero. And Switzerland has to raise awareness about her. We have to work together to release not only Natalia, but all the other political prisoners.
Speaking of Switzerland and the sanctions, you mentioned them as well. There have been sanctions against Belarus, against the president, Lukaschenko, who can't travel to Switzerland. Some other 60 members of his, let's say, his circle are not able to travel to Switzerland either. Is that enough for you, or do you ask and demand for more sanctions?
Switzerland joined 2 packages of sanctions, but it didn't support the third package of sanctions. So we ask to support third and the fourth package of sanctions, of EU sanctions, when they will be imposed. But we also offer to impose national sanctions against Lukashenko and his cronies, and just judges and tried policemen who were involved in elections falsifications and in atrocities and violence. It's what's going on in Belarus is our pain, and we think that actions of other countries have to be braver and stronger.
You have had some discussions. You met the president of the National Assembly, for example. You were about to meet the foreign minister as well. What were the reactions so far? Do you feel like you're understood? Do you feel like the Swiss counterparts understand your situation, the situation of your country? Have you had any reassurances?
We say that your government and parliaments and people show solidarity with our situation. They feel our pain, I'd say. But, and we are grateful for this. But actions are important, and
so it's not enough.
For sure, it's not enough. For sure, it's not enough, because time is urgent. People are suffering in this very moment, day after day, innocent people, and for sure, we are grateful for everything. But much more can be done, and we're trying to look for ways out together. And Switzerland can for sure be mediator in the dialogue between civil society and the regime.
When you talk about the people suffering and the pain you mentioned as well, give us a glimpse about what it is at the moment to be living in Belarus. We don't know that country very well. I have to be honest. I think it's a country that tends to be forgotten a bit. It has a ruler. It has a president who is in charge since more than 25 years. The United States call him the last dictator of Europe. Give us a glimpse of how it is, actually. What is the reality for the opposition, for the people in Belarus?
So, for 26 years, we had Alexander Lukashenko as the president of our country. And for 26 years, he oppressed our nation. He oppressed people. We hardly have any rights in our countries. At least we don't have a right to talk what we think about this government, because we immediately become their enemies, his private enemies. And on the 9th of August previous year, we had new elections, and I was opponent of Lukashenko. And all the results of these elections were destroyed. People know whom they voted for. They, according to alternative accounts, I have won on these elections. Lukashenko lost, but he declared himself to be the president. As if he got 80% of votes, and people went out to demonstrate against fraudulent elections. And Lukashenko made 3 days of hell in Belarus. During 3 days after elections, thousands of Belarusian people have been detained and tortured and raped and humiliated in the jails. And after this, people started to go out against violence in Belarus. And for 7 months already, people are fighting to the regime. Our main goal of this revolution is new elections. We are not fighting against, Lukashenko personally or something like this. We want new elections because country is in humanitarian, political, and economic crisis.
You're fighting against the system
as
a whole.
And since the day of election, more than 35,000 people have been detained. And more than, at the moment, 270 political prisoners. And this number is growing every day. So I can tell you what is the usual day of a person in Belarus looks like. So in the morning when you are going out to the job, you have to take a special bag where extra clothes, you have to put extra clothes and all the toilet appliances just in case you can be kidnapped from the street and put in jail because you wrote a message to somebody about revolution or you participated in a rally.
This is a reality. This happens every day.
And every day people are going out for rallies and they can be detained at any moment as well. And people don't feel safe in their apartments because any minute police can come and search your house and take people from apartment to jail, even leaving children alone in this flat. So people, the level of violence since the 9th of August was awful. It is even increasing at the moment, but despite of this, people are continuing to fight.
But you said yourself that the fight is probably lost on the street. You have to do something more. The revolution has to get to another step, right?
With the help of batons and guns, regime made Belarusian people to step on another stage, I'd say. We started to fight undergroundly because so many victims, so many sufferings we face at the moment, so we have to be more inventive and we are trying to look for other ways of fighting against regime. People, again, they have to act more like, I'll find the word, dispersively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they
through the whole country as well,
yes,
in different spots and places.
They participate in many initiatives like writing letters or doing flash mobs or tying these white ribbons to know that we are still here, we are fighting, we are not disappearing, just for people to see each other.
Isn't it frustrating then to see that on a world stage, Mr. Lukashenko is sometimes still accepted? We have seen the pictures of, for example, of Mr. Fasel, the Swiss president of the International Ice Hockey Federation, who was greeted by Mr. Lukashenko. They hugged, they spoke to each other. When you see that on an international stage, he's sometimes still accepted and people still talk to him. How frustrating is that?
The situation with ice hockey championship is rather interesting because cancellation of this championship is our not only Belarusian victory.
Mm-hmm. That has happened some
yeah, this
weeks
is
ago,
victory on international arena, because not only like people were involved, governments of different countries were involved, but also big companies like Skoda and Nivea, they refused to participate in this championship. And when Fasel came to Minsk and hugged Lukashenko, of course, he was treated by Belarusian people in the world like betrayer. Yeah. And though they were friends long time with Lukashenko, you know, I also hope that he understood that it was mistake to show this friendship, to show off this friendship while the whole world is standing against ice hockey championship.
Let us speak about another kind of friend, Vladimir Putin. We saw him skiing with Mr. Lukashenko, and they still have a quite close relationship. Where do you see Russia in all this and the role of Russia? And maybe the second question, do you fear that Russia might be too involved in the whole conflict and that you might end up a little bit like the Ukraine, for example, that Russia is meddling too much with the affairs and also the independence of your country?
You know, for 26 years of ruling, Lukashenko lost connection with European countries and made friends with the Kremlin. And these two leaders are convenient to each other. They know how to communicate to each other. And after this great rising up of Belarusian people, we really sorry that Putin supported Lukashenko at that very moment. It means that he supported violence and tortures. But we know that Russian people are in solidarity with Belarusian people. We are not enemies with Russia. We are friends. But it's only up to Belarusian people to solve our destiny. And
is there a risk that Russia might get too involved? Do you see that risk?
Of course, it may be. But we always send messages to Russia. Look, it's not our revolution. It's not pro-Russian or pro-Western. It's pro-Belarusian. It's the revolution between past and future. Lukashenko and his stability is our past. We want to move forward. And it's so strange why the whole world moved forward so much. We are staying in this stability and not moving anywhere. New generation grew up. I understand that our parents and grandparents, they lived in Soviet Union. They got used to this situation when they can rely only to themselves. But new generation, they see how we can live. We want to gain this respect from our government. We want to participate in the life of our country. We want to have rights. That's why we are fighting at the moment for new elections, to gain our rights again. And we always, send messages to Russia. Stop! Don't don't
interfere too much.
Interfere. Yes, it's about. It's only our revolution. It's not yours. It's not Western. Just if you want to stay for human rights, please look. We have a humanitarian crisis in Belarus. You can just support Belarusian people, but not interfere.
When we speak about your personal revolution, when we see and hear you speak, we might have the impression she's been doing that for years already, and she's been a politician since she was little and younger, but that's not the case. You only kind of entered that stage last year, by default almost, because your husband was arrested and you took over from him and you took over the kind of the role as the voice of the opposition. You have been, I might just say, a normal wife at home, and then you took over all this responsibility, all this pressure. You had to leave your country. Your children had to leave the country. They now live in a space that we shouldn't know where it is because they're at risk. How do you deal with that situation personally?
I always thought that I'm a weak woman, that is behind her man. Our husband was, he was main in our family, and but when life put me in such circumstances, when I had to make serious decisions, when I had to take responsibility not only for myself and for my children, but for millions of Belarusian people, I discovered that I'm a strong woman. And I had to study so much during this couple of months. I had to had to become absolutely different person.
But was it always clear for you that you're going to take on that fight? Because I know that the regime has put you under enormous pressure for your kids as well. They threatened you with your kids, right?
Yeah, it's once I got telephone call when unknown person told me that if you don't stop running for this pre-election campaign, you will put you in jail and your children will be put in orphanage. Of course, I felt fear at that moment, but I couldn't betray Belarusian people. I couldn't betray myself, so I had to send my children abroad and continue this fight inside the country.
Do they understand that decision? When you talk to your children, I think they're 10 and 5 years old. Do they know what's going on? Can you talk to them about politics, about your decisions?
Oh, of course, I'm not talking about politics with them. We are talking only about their daddy. Mm-hmm. And older son knows that his daddy is in jail and knows why, because we have bad president who is beating people and, this on his childhood level. My daughter doesn't know anything. For her, her daddy is on business trip and he's sending presents to her, but it's like a trip for them, staying in another country. And I don't think I have to talk a lot about this because they have to have their childhood. It's not problems for their age.
We have felt and noticed that when only doing an interview, for example, is very difficult because you're not supposed to know too much about your whereabouts and where you're going and where you're traveling. So you're under a high kind of protection all the time. Is that easy for you to accept, or is the danger always so present that you have to live with it in a way?
What do you mean?
That you have to need protection, and that people are not supposed to know maybe where you're about to travel. And are you at risk, at a high risk?
I hardly ever think about my personal safeness at the moment because I really feel safe in the European Union. But of course, there always can be risk of something happening. But I don't have time to think about this. I have to do at the moment to do everything for my country, for people who are suffering there. So it's out of the question now.
You talked about what should be happening in your country, and we know with 80% Mr. Lukashenko has been elected the new president. What are your wishes for the future? You said, for the time being he's the president, but I mean, if I understand you correctly, you consider yourself to be the president-elect, the right president-elect.
During election campaign, people knew that elections will be falsified, and we had alternative counting of votes, and all the improvements have been destroyed right after the elections, so we don't have evidences, but people know whom they voted for, and people accept me as leader of democratic Belarus, that leader elected by Belarusian people, and they gave me this right to talk on behalf of them on international arena, and they gave me this right to stand with them till new elections will be organized.
What struck me around that election last year was also Mr. Lukashenko's view of women. There are a lot of women politicians in the opposition now. They're kind of leading together with you. They're leading the opposition. He accepted you as the second candidate, but he also said the country is not ready for a woman president. She should be at home cooking for her children. Women are not. Don't have the talent to be politically active. Do you think he underestimated you also as a woman? And how does that make you feel?
He underestimated the whole nation. But of course, just allowing me to participate in this election campaign, he wanted to make love of me as a woman, first of all, as a housewife that never was in politics, and he got rid of almost all the men candidates. He put them in jail and made them to flee. He couldn't imagine that people would vote for women, because he always told that our constitution is not for women, our country can't be led by a woman. So it was his mistake, because he lost connection with people. He couldn't imagine that people could choose a woman as their leader.
We're almost at the end, but if I ask you what your wishes would be for your country and for the people who support you, and you said it, there are a lot of people who support you, how shall this go on? Do you think the fight can be won by you only, or by the country only and the people of its country only, or do we need an international effort to overturn the election last year, to do a re-election, or where do you see this going?
Okay, look, our main aim, I'm repeating this, of this resolution is new elections. New elections in September or October. To have this election, we need dialogue. We need dialogue with between government and the majority of Belarusian people. But as we see, regime doesn't want to hold this dialogue. They try to solve this political crisis with the help of violence. But we have to put so much pressure on this regime for them to understand this, that dialogue is the only way out of the situation.
Only you, or on international
And
level?
this pressure has to be put inside the country and outside the country. We have to, inside the country, these rallies, this, any shows of protest and movement, and outside of country, of course, this is financial isolation of Lukashenko's regime and political isolation. He is already toxic to the European countries, and we have to put more and more pressure just to make this dialogue closer. And
last question: what about your role personally? Do you stay Mr. Lukashenko's biggest nightmare, or will you step back once the situation has cleared, and maybe once your husband has been released, for example?
I don't know if I'm sure that I'm private enemy of Lukashenko at the moment, and he understood that it was maybe the greatest mistake. But I'm ready to sacrifice with everything. I'm ready to stay with Belarusian people till new elections are organized.
Thank you very much for your visit and for the discussion, Swetlana Tichanowskaja.
Thank you so much.
Und danke Ihnen vielmals, sind Sie mit dabei gewesen. Wir sehen uns nächstes Mal wieder. Bis dann, eine gute Zeit und Adieu miteinander.